Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Folks want to take their seats and please silence your devices, and we'll begin the program in just a few minutes. Thanks, everyone, for being here. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I want to start with welcoming former Speaker of the Massachusetts House of Representatives and Northeastern University Fellow for Public Life, Robert DeLeo.
Thank you. I know we have one guest, I guess, who may not be able to stay for the whole presentation, but I want to make sure that I introduce Ruthie Luasian as the president of the Boston City Council. Welcome her. What's that?
My daughter and my dad works here at Northeastern.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me that. Even more importantly that, she's a graduate of the Boston Latin School. Graduated a couple of years after me, but that's okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Civic Experience event. I first of all would like to thank Michael Ferrari and Maddie Brogan, who assisted Michael in putting today's function into making it a reality. Thank you very much. The Civic Experience empowers students to see themselves as leaders and change makers in media, politics, and policy, both now and in the years immediately following graduation. The series connects emerging voices with experienced public leaders to explore how young people can shape policy, drive innovation in governance, and make a meaningful impact early in their careers. Tonight's program, From the Classroom to the Campaign Trail, encouraging students to explore ways to start their own path in public service, build leadership skills, and put their ideas into action. Tonight, we're thrilled to welcome Amanda Litman, the co-founder and president of Run for Something, the national organization that's helped thousands take the leap into public service and run for office. She's the author of Run for Something, and more recently, When We're in Charge, which she has been recognized, and her work has been recognized in Politico, Bloomberg, Time, and Fortune. It goes to tell you the type of individual, how well respected she is throughout the country for what she has done. She holds also a bachelor's degree from Northeastern. That's our campus in Chicago. For those of you who, it's a little smaller school, but it's in a big city, so that helps, I guess. But just joking. Dan Ehrman, leading tonight's conversation, is my colleague and friend. I asked Dan earlier, I said, you have so many titles, can you please condense them for me? But there was a couple that I wrote down to make sure that I did not forget or to say something that was incorrect. Director of Hybrid Online Programs at Northeastern School of Law, and Director in the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs, amongst a whole host of other things as well. He received his bachelor's degree from UCLA, his doctorate degree from Harvard, and he was a Marshall Scholar at Oxford. For those of you, welcome, Mr. Chairman, sir. I know you're a busy man. Nice to see you. Those of you, I hope, many of you who read the Northeastern Global News, you will know that if you, hopefully many of you read it, all of you should, because quite frankly, when I am in the morning and start my day in terms of getting my news and reading my newspapers and multiple whatever, the Northeastern Global News is one of the must-reads for me each and every morning. And anything that you see with Dan Ehrman, either that he had authored or that he had been interviewed on, it's must-reading. I will tell you, as a lawyer, in addition to being a university fellow here at Northeastern, I can say I'm not sure if anyone more succinctly writes about the cases that are going on before the Supreme Court in Washington. And I mean that sincerely. And I've told you this many, many times, but now I can tell the rest of the world. Also, what I have found Dan even more helpful is if you want to go to a Jewish deli, talk to Dan Ehrman. I about 4 or 5 years ago when I first got here, was going to Marblehead, I think it was, and you were very helpful in steering me in the right direction, as well as what to order, by the way. But with that, we're going to start our spotlight conversation now, and I'm pleased to have Dan and Amanda. Could you please step up?
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Such a generous introduction.
It was amazing.
Little lumbar support.
I wish my parents were here.
No one's nice. No one's that nice about me.
So, thank you so much, everyone. It's really nice to be here. And I just want to first say welcome to Northeastern, not your alma mater.
Same purple.
Northwestern, but she did note on the way in that the colors of the seats
They do speak to me.
speak to her
Yeah.
with our Chicago branch campus that Speaker DeLeo talked about. So thank you so much for being here. As Speaker DeLeo mentioned, you have inspired, I think at last count, 200,000 plus.
We're at about 230,000 people who've ever raised their hands to run for office
Wow.
with us.
So 230,000 people from all 50 states
All 50 states?
to take the leap, as he said, through Run for Something, which is an organization that you co-founded in early 2017. So you then wrote a book about it. You have another book. We'll get to those as well. So my agenda is learn a little bit about you, what makes you tick, your journey, as they say. Then talk a little bit about Run for Something, the circumstances that led you to it, how it has evolved in the, I guess, nearly 10 years, eight plus.
Eight and a half.
Yeah.
Feels like a million.
I feel like once you're at 8, you could round up.
Round up, nearly a decade.
It's closer to a decade than it is 5 years. And then I'm going to ask you to fix politics and our broken democracy.
Deal.
No pressure. Does that sound like a plan?
Totally normal
Right.
Thursday.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So let's just start, sort of, origin story. What role did politics, I guess, play in your life growing up? What are some of your earliest political memories and experiences?
So I was born and raised in Northern Virginia, right outside DC suburbs. My parents were not political. My dad was a lawyer, patent attorney, and my mom was a law school dropout who became a stay-at-home mom because I was the oldest of 4 kids in 4 years, which now that I have 2 under 3, I understand why she resents us just a little. It was chaos in my house growing up. Politics was part of the news that we read, but it was not really the conversation at the dinner table, because there was no conversation at the dinner table. It was chaos. However, my best friend's mom growing up was extremely politically active. So starting about middle school, she would take us to protests. I remember going to at that point it was called NARAL, Pro-Choice Virginia rally, which Virginia in the 90s and early 2000s was not a Democratic place. It was very Republican. And I grew up on the edge of the suburbs where it was almost horse country. The gas station near my house used to have a sign, still does maybe, that said Santa buys his guns here, place your order today. So when I was growing up, politics felt both very present and very distant. We would go to protests, I would knock doors for Virginia Democrats, and I knew that I thought politics was interesting, that it was a way to make a difference, but it didn't feel like something I could necessarily do until midway through high school. I had an AP government teacher who transformed my life, who opened my eyes to what actually government was and how it worked and how campaigns felt like a mix of art and science. My senior year, is this right? No, junior year of high school, I skipped a day of school, which I was not that kind of kid. And I went to go see this guy, Barack Obama, speak at the university across the street from my high school. He had not even announced he was running for president yet. He was just doing these Students for Obama rallies across the country. So I remember looking this up. It was January 2007, and he was going to launch his campaign February of that year.
Weeks away, yeah.
Weeks away. But he was touring the country doing these events. And I remember being at the Patriot Center, which is the arena, or I think it was in the Student Center, at George Mason University, and being oh, this guy, I want to work for him one day.
He's good at politics.
He's good at this, and he makes me feel like I can be a part of this.
Right, inclusive politics.
Inclusive and inspiring and ambitious. And he spoke to what it felt like to be 17 and dreaming in that moment. So I decided to go to Northwestern in part because I had a family friend who was at Northwestern and got a job on his presidential campaign because it was in downtown Chicago. And she got an internship. And I was like, that's what I'll do. He's going to win, which 17-year-old me didn't realize that was an insane thing to possibly happen. And I'm going to go to college in Chicago so I can work for him in 4 or 5 years. And so I did. So I went to Northwestern, as you capably joked, and I specifically studied American Studies, which at Northwestern is a program. It's interdisciplinary, where you can sort of design your own major, with a focus on gender in politics. It was always the thing I was most interested in. I wrote my thesis on women running for office against other women and how it changed gender performance in TV ads in the early 2000s, when there actually wasn't that many examples. Super interesting. My senior year, after doing a couple summers I interned at my local county Democratic Party, I interned on the Hill, which taught me I hated the Hill. I did stuff at political magazines. I worked at a Ms. magazine in LA. But by senior year, I was like, no, I want to do campaigns. So I got an internship on the Obama campaign in downtown Chicago. 17-year-old me's dream come true. So I spent 3 days a week all of senior year taking the L downtown, going to headquarters, working from until they would let me in, until they kicked me out of the office, and then doing classes 2 days a week and writing my thesis. I was hired about a day before I graduated, or a couple weeks before I graduated, skipped a day of work to go to the graduation ceremony.
So were you volunteering at the?
I was an intern, so I got college credit for it for a little while, but
Okay,
I was not.
you got some
yeah.
credit. Okay.
I did like the class where you get credit for your internship, and it was me and a bunch of football players. It was fun. I don't know if that's what it's like here, but that's what it was at the Northwestern School of Communications. So I was hired before I graduated, took a day off to go to the graduation ceremony, and then stuck with the campaign. I was an email writer, so it was a lot of sending fundraising emails, mostly. Volunteer stuff and like how else to get engaged. It was mostly raising grassroots money. And it was so fun. I was working harder than I'd ever worked in my entire life. I was at the office from 7 a.m. until 2 a.m., 7 days a week, and it was the most fun I would ever have. It felt like being in a fraternity or sorority, and I was in a sorority in college, but it felt like being part of a family that's cared so much. And the stakes were so high. We won.
Just
It was so fun.
for those who don't remember, this is the 2012
re-election.
re-elect between President Obama and former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney.
Correct. Who we thought was the devil incarnate. How little we knew.
Right wing.
Yeah. It's the devil you know. So we won. That was fun. Winning is great. Highly recommend. I stayed in Chicago for another year working for Organizing for Action, which was the president's nonprofit he had set up to do grassroots organizing around his agenda. Then in March 2014, I moved to Florida to work for the governor's race in that cycle. That was Charlie Crist for governor, who was the former Republican governor turned independent, turned Democrat, who said, I didn't leave the party left me, pretty prescient, and was running against Rick Scott, who's now the senator from Florida.
And was an insurance executive, I think?
He had been a hospital executive who had left with a golden parachute of $300 million after they had been indicted many, many times for Medicare fraud.
Wow.
Not that it's relevant. He had taken the fifth 75 times during his deposition. There's some pretty excellent tape of it. And that was the first time I was really close to a candidate. I spent a lot of time traveling the state with Charlie, who, if you're not familiar with him, you should Google him. He is proof that literally anyone can be a member of Congress. He's cuckoo bananas. And I say that mostly affectionately. He lived off of Red Bull, beef jerky, and cough drops.
Good mix.
Very Floridian. And he would travel the state, and we would go across, and we would go into gas stations, like in the middle of the Everglades, and he would shake hands with people and be like, hi, I'm Charlie, I'm running for governor. Tell me what's on your mind. And he would spend 25 minutes in a conversation with the guy behind the counter. I'd be like, sir, we're running late. He goes, he's my constituent, I gotta talk to him. I gotta earn this guy's vote. And he would ask him at the end of the conversation, put $1 on the counter. I was like, what? We can't take cash as a campaign contribution. What are you doing? Put $1 on the counter. I need to know that you're in. Doesn't need to be much, but I need you to have a little skin in the game. And that was such a powerful way of engaging with people. It was straight up lunacy, but it was really powerful in which he treated every person with that kind of respect. We lost by just a hair over 1% after Rick Scott spent $13 million of his own dollars on TV in the final 2 weeks. There was a period of time in Tampa that year, that fall, where if you were watching the 6 to 7 o'clock news, it would be 15 minutes of news, 15 minutes of Rick Scott commercials, 15 minutes of news. I went to Disney World. I got really drunk at Epcot. Threw up all over my friend. That was fine.
All around the world.
All around the world. Literally, we drank around the world. It was sad. Then I moved to New York. Did a couple months in DC, but then I moved to New York, where I now live, to work for Secretary Clinton's presidential campaign. So I was one of the first employees. I helped launch the campaign, had doing all the prep beforehand, designing the org chart, and I was her email director, which meant I got to make a lot of email jokes about Hillary Clinton that weren't funny after Election Day.
It still might be too soon.
It's still a little too soon. Yeah.
For those of us
Yeah.
who remember. Yes?
It was bad.
Okay.
I didn't like
Okay.
it. But I was 25 years old. I was in a pretty senior position. I managed a team of ultimately 30 people responsible for raising $330 million. And we did it. And it was the thing that I had been working towards my entire adult life, which at that point hadn't been that long, but it was the thing I'd been working towards, which is we're gonna elect the first woman president. And we got these pep talks in the office. They were like, if we win, imagine what it will mean to little girls and little boys, but especially to little girls across the country. And the stakes of this are so high. Like, we've got to stop, from the marching in the streets. And it felt like so hyperbolic at the time, until later, when, as it turns out, it wasn't hyperbolic enough. I would work 100-hour weeks. I didn't go to a grocery store in 2016 until April. Wow. I remember very vividly being like, oh, I forgot what produce looked like. I was there on election night in the Javits Center, which is the convention center in New York, where we were supposed to have this election celebration. And if you've never been, it's this beautiful glass building, like a literal glass ceiling that we were supposed to metaphorically break that evening. And I was backstage with all the staff. I was there until 3 a.m. when we heard that she had called Trump to concede. I took a cab home to my apartment, sensing a theme. I was crying so much I puked out the side of the cab in a random neighborhood in Brooklyn. Then I came back into Manhattan the next morning, and I was in the 3rd row at her concession speech, where she was the only person not crying. It was gut-wrenching, and I was also unemployed. But a week after Election Day, I started hearing from people I'd gone to high school and college with. Hey, Amanda, you're the only person I know that works in politics. I'm a public school teacher in Chicago. They keep cutting our budgets. If Trump could be president, it seems like fucking anybody can do this. What do I do? Who do I call? Tell me where to go. And I did not have an answer for them. Because at the time, this is November 2016, if you wanted to do more than vote and more than volunteer, there was nowhere you could go that would take your call. Especially if you're young, if you don't have access to money, if you don't meet the traditional idea of what a politician looks like, you were shit out of luck. Now that, to me, felt like a symptom of bigger problems both in the Democratic Party but also in our democracy. So I reached out to a whole bunch of people with an idea. What if we created an organization to solve this problem? I'm unemployed and sad, so I have some time. What if we do this? One of those folks became my co-founder, this guy named Ross Morales Raqueto, who'd been working campaigns for about 15 years. He had done PACs and unions and campaigns of all sizes. And he was like, I've been thinking about something like this too. Let's see what we can build. We wrote a plan, and we built a website. And on Trump's first inauguration date, January 20th, 2017, we hit launch on Run for Something. We thought 100 people would sign up to run for office in the first year, because everyone told us, nobody wants to run for office. Nobody wants to do this. Candidate recruitment is really hard. It's really difficult to get people to run, especially young people, especially local. Good luck, Godspeed, but seems like a fool's errand. We had 1,000 people sign up in the first week. As you said, as of today, we've had more than 230,000 young people all across the country who've raised their hands to say they want to run, including more than 70,000 since last November. That's more people in the last 12 months than we had in the entirety of Trump's first term. Oh. We have endorsed more than 3,000 people, including Ruth C., Tram, and others, many, many others across Massachusetts and Boston, and some of your colleagues on the city council, and Sam as well. We have helped elect more than 1,500 people across 49 states and DC, mostly women, mostly people of color, about a quarter LGBTQ plus leaders, all millennials and Gen Z. There are now 6 of those alumni, we consider our endorsed candidates, 6 of them running for governor, 4 of them running for United States Senate, 5 currently serving in the House, and another 2 or 3 dozen running for House or statewide office. So when we launched in 2017, I was actually going back to look at our initial strategic plan, which is all online, so the receipts are published. I was like, maybe in 10 years, there'll be a member of the United States House. It is possible that after the 2026 election, there are 25 or 30 Run for Something alum serving in the House, and possibly 4 in the Senate, and multiple governors. My guess, if I was gonna put a stake in it, is not 2028, but probably 2032. Someone from our pipeline will be a very credible candidate for president. We'll see. I don't know if it's an open primary, we'll see. Maybe 2036. But it has been such a gift and such a joy and so hard to have done this work over the last almost 10 years. And I've learned so much about what it means to lead, both personally, but also more importantly from the politicians and public servants that we've worked with, and what it means in particular to lead in this moment. That was a really long answer to your question.
It was great, and
But-
I have follow-ups.
Hit me.
The first one is you said you've elected people in 49 states. Didn't everyone here immediately want to know?
Idaho is where we're missing. But I'm going to win in Idaho because we actually just announced our 5-year vision to expand the battleground map, and Idaho is on that list, both because I love a challenge, but two, Idaho is going to gain a congressional seat in 2032 after the redistricting process because there's been a huge influx of people. It's one of the fastest growing states in the union, and also one of the younger ones. And in particular, that new congressional seat is going to be around Boise. We don't have anyone who can run for Congress in Boise. So one of the things Run for Something wants to do is get more hopefully Democratic or values-aligned independents running for city council and school board and library board and the like in Boise or in the broader area, Ada County, I believe is what it's called, where 60% of the state's growth has been, in order to prepare for when there's a new House seat there. So we're going to win in Idaho.
Great. Now, you've mentioned school board, local office. How many, I was in a conversation about this recently, how many elected offices are there? Do you know in the United States? This is not a quiz, this is a genuine
More
question.
than 500,000. There are more elected offices in the United States than there are McDonald's employees. Just a fun point of comparison. If you think there's a lot of McDonald's employees, there are more elected officials.
And this one I did look up. What percentage of them are uncontested?
Year over year, about 70% of local races go uncontested, meaning there's only one candidate from either major party, and in most places it's usually a Republican.
That's not so healthy for democracy.
No, it's not great. And in a lot of places, this varies from community to community, but in a lot of places they'll cancel elections if they're uncontested. The person will just walk right in, which is bad for any number of reasons. I mean, I guess it saves the district some money to a certain extent, but voting is a habit. And when we don't give people the chance to build that habit, we are missing out on an opportunity for them to flex their sort of democratic muscle.
Yeah, so maybe you could talk a little bit about why you have that focus. I mean, I think in the popular imagination, it's always Congress. It's always I want to run for the House. I want to run for the Senate. Anyone can run for president. Why not? We have to be 35.
Yeah.
Some other things, but yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about local office and why you focused on it and sort of the benefits there.
So part of it was practical. Most first-time candidates should start locally. It's an office where you don't have to quit your job to run for. It is much more it's not free, but it's much more affordable than people think. 75% of school board races cost $1,000 or less. 85% cost about $5,000 or less. The average budget of a Run for Something candidate is about 10 grand. So it's like a lot of money, but it's not millions. And you're not paying for it yourself. You're asking people to invest in the future of their community and their home. I always tell candidates, fundraising is a public service, in that you are giving people an opportunity to have some skin in the game, a stake in their future of the place that they live. And think about what a lot of us do when things feel out of control or like we want to solve a problem. Make a donation. You give, $20 to Planned Parenthood or the ACLU or the local food bank or mutual aid. Sometimes giving money is a way to make a real meaningful difference, even a small amount. So when you run for local office, you're giving people a way to make a difference. It's my cope, because fundraising does kind of suck. So part of it is quite practically, it is something that if you have never run for office before, you can do. The way in which you can win is simply by outworking your opponent. You can knock doors and talk to voters. You can often talk to every voter. Maybe not for state ledge or not citywide in Boston, but we work with candidates in places where their win number, meaning the number of voters they need to get to show up to them to win, is 500, 300. Sometimes they win by 4 or 5 votes. So they are literally talking to every person in their community, often multiple times. The issues for a local campaign are so personal. Right. Can you afford to live where you want to live? Can your kids get the care that they need such that you can live the life you want? Can you afford to have a family? How clean is the water you drink? How easy to drive is it on the roads? How good is the public transit? How easy or hard it is to get the health care that you want or need? Like, that's not some abstract democracy, blah, blah, blah. That's my day-to-day living. Is the library open on Sundays? Is a real thing decided by local government that, as someone who has a 3-year-old that loves the library, it directly affects my quality of life when that is not the case. Local government, we like to say, like the further down the ballot, the closer to your home. It is so tactile. Like you can feel it, and you can really feel it when it doesn't work. And when we thought about what do we need to do to build a better bench, because one of my sort of problem statements when we launched Run for Something was that like there just weren't that many candidates I was excited to work for down the road. There was like a few here or there, but when I thought about it as an operative, like, okay, well, like what presidential candidate was I going to be pumped post 2016? I couldn't really think of that many. The bench felt weak. So I wanted to build a better bench. And that meant building and finding better city council members and school board members and state legislators such that when they're ready to run for Congress, they've got some experience, they've got the ties, they've got local expertise, they know how to do this. And the thing that people, I think, miss with politics is nobody's born to be a politician. It's kind of like art or music or even sports. The way you become one is by doing it. You put your name on the ballot and you become a politician. You become an artist by making art. You become a musician by making music. That also means you can learn how to do it. In the same way you can learn how to hit a ball or draw a picture, you can learn how to do this. There's some things you need. You need capacity to care. You need passion. You need to be willing to do the work. You need to be willing to listen. You need to be willing to take feedback. You need to have a thick skin. But like campaigns are mostly just logistics, and what Run for Something does is help you with them.
What I was going to ask was, it seems like the number of people who want to be endorsed or to work with Run for Something is not the same as those you choose. So what goes into your calculations? You know, how do you vet, and you know, are there larger principles?
So let me explain how the funnel works. So you sign up at runforwhat.net. Like enter your information, you can look up what office you can run for. So everybody here could go to runforwhat.net, and you can look up and see what offices might be available to you, give you a little more information. You will then start getting emails and text messages from our team. These will not be ones asking you for money, although we welcome it if you've got it. These will be ones telling you about events that we're hosting. Like we do monthly conference calls where we talk through the same basic questions every first-time candidate has. Sometimes we have different guest speakers or themes. We did one a couple last month, September, specifically for renters running for office.
And open to anyone in that?
Open to anyone in that pipeline.
Okay.
You can join. We did one earlier this month for moms thinking about running for office. We do these every month. You will also then get added to the Run for Something community, which is a new online space we just started this summer that includes 2 tracks of training. One is if you're ready to run now. And we've got modules for you, there's videos, there's worksheets, and as you complete them, one of our volunteers will get in touch with you. Hey, just saw you completed the tell your story training. Let's talk through it. Let me give you some feedback. Or we've got one if you're ready to run a couple years down the road that helps you think about your personal story, engagement in your community, like how to start to power map, how to like think about it a little bit longer. And similarly, as you complete it, someone from our team or our network will reach out and get in touch with you. Now, once you have filed to get on the ballot, which we have guides for every state to tell you how to do it, and you've got your campaign plan, which again, we have trainings for how to do that, and you've maybe gone to an in-person event, because while we don't do that much in person, we have partners in every state, as well as national ones who do, and we will make sure you know about them when they're happening near you. You can apply for our endorsement. That application is fully public. You can find it on our website. You fill out, what's your campaign plan, what's your budget, what's your win number, what are your values? And we ask a specific set of value statements we want you to align with, and in particular, how do those values show up in your campaign? So tell me what it means to be a pro-choice school board candidate in Nebraska. What does that mean for you? Could mean something very different than to be a pro-choice state legislative candidate in New York City, as an example. That's okay. What we want is to be tight on values and flexible on policy. knowing that it can show up in a lot of different ways. And what more important even than that is we want people to really be reflective of the communities they serve. So I, a 35-year-old mom in Brooklyn, don't need to agree with our candidates on every issue. What I need is for their voters to agree with them. And what I need is for them to understand how their voters feel, what they care about, and how to hear from them and communicate with them and connect with them. So we ask that in our endorsement application, like, how are you talking to people? What does your voter contact plan look like? How are you knocking doors? How are you making calls? What are your local ties? Like, what groups are you a part of? Where do you spend your time? Applications are reviewed by a local operative who gives us context for like what's going on across the country. Because to be honest, I don't know that much about the Hawaii City Council races, but we have an operative in Hawaii who gives us some background, helps us know what we're walking into. We have a vetting firm that does a background check because one of the things we ask is, what's the oppo on you? Like, what is your opponent going to say? What are they going to find? What are we going to find? I would say that there's certainly things that are like non-starters, but more than that, we want to know that you're not bullshitting people and you're not lying to them. We want to know that you are being honest with people about your flaws and what you have learned and how you are bringing them into your campaign.
So in other words, if you did do something stupid when you were a kid,
totally.
If you've learned
You've
from it,
grown.
yeah.
Like, what we don't want you to be trying to deceive your voters, your volunteers, your donors, your staff, or your endorsers.
Yeah.
You should be upfront because, as anyone who's ever run for office knows, eventually everything comes out. And either you put it out and you stake a claim and you tell your story, or someone else puts it out and tells your story for you, and then you don't really get a say. And then our staff reviews everything. So we endorse about half the people who apply. So it's like a 50-ish% acceptance rate. And we really then engage deeply with our endorsed candidates. You do an onboarding call with our staff. So if you're in Massachusetts, it would be our regional director who lives here. He lives in New Hampshire, but he's here quite a bit. And it's whatever you need. Are you like an all-star candidate who's getting a ton of help from the caucus and you've got your shit together and Working Families Party has endorsed you and you're like good to go and you just need someone to like flag you for some reporters and promote you on social media and send some text to every once in a while? Great, we can be that backbone. Are you running in a really isolated area where nobody will answer your emails because it's such a small-scale race and you can't get access to the voter file because the Democratic Party in the state's not going to answer your emails either because they don't have their shit together? And you've got a debate coming up and you don't really know how to do a debate. And also you really want to send text messages to folks, but the tool is so expensive that you can't really afford it on your budget. Great, the state party answers our emails. We have experts who can prep you for your debate, and we've got a discount for a texting tool we can hook you up with.
Nice.
Everything in between. So it's a whole range of sort of support. Whatever it is you need, we're here for you, within reason and legally compliant, mostly. We track through our endorsed candidates to Election Day. So next week, we're going to be tracking about 250 candidates across the country that we've endorsed for this cycle. And then they're considered part of our alumni community. And we are still constantly promoting our alumni. I'm always talking about Ruth C. and Sam and Tram, 2 reporters, 2 donors, 2 supporters. We are always trying to connect folks who are doing similar work across the country. And we're trying to make sure that people really know about these rising stars, about these incredible leaders, because they're amazing.
I did see the focus on youth. Mm-hmm. What are the perspectives and qualities that someone brings, and what might a 55, 65, 75, 85-year-old say? Would they, they say you're being, I guess it would be ageist.
I do get called ageist on the internet a lot. That's fine. So Run for Something only endorses people 40 and under in their first election. This gets me yelled at a lot. In the same way that there are PACs that only support women, or only support LGBTQ candidates, or only support black leaders, or what have you, we only support people under 40 and under. That doesn't mean that other people shouldn't run. That might mean we're not the best organization to support them. And I think it's really, really important that we created a place where your younger leaders, who often, as we talked about earlier, don't have access to wealth, don't necessarily have the resumes because they're in their 20s and 30s, but have such vision, such ties to the community, and can do the work, have a space where they're not going to get elbowed out by the 55-year-old who is a partner at a law firm and has a bunch of money and has the resources to be the credible candidate, the viable candidate. We also know that young people are at a very different stage of life. They're dealing with different challenges. A lot of our folks are renters. A lot of our folks are transplants to their community. They moved there for college and then stayed to start a family, so they're often not like born and raised somewhere, but that doesn't mean they don't have skin in the game and a stay in where it should go. A lot of our folks are parents of young kids. It's very different than when your kids are older and out of the house. It's also very different when those childcare bills are hitting you today, as opposed to what they were 10 or 15 years ago. I see you nodding your head like, it hits different. New York City has free 3K, and man, now that I have a 3-year-old in free 3K, I would die for Bill de Blasio, which is not a thing I would have said before my daughter was 3 years old. It hits different when it's personal. And, not a shocker to any of you, government's really old. The average age in the House is about 58, 59. In the Senate, it's about 64. Last count, about 30 of 50 US governors were over the age of 60. The median in state legislators, I think this has changed in the last couple of years, but the last stat I have is fewer than 10% of state legislators were under the age of 35. The median school board member in the United States is 59. They probably don't have kids in the public school anymore. It's just not where the average American is. The median American right now is 39 years old. Now, I get a lot of pushback on this. I'm like, well, if young people wanted representation, they should vote. We do. More. And man, you know what gets young people to vote? Younger candidates on the ballot who can speak their language, who can articulate to them a vision for our shared future, who can do so in the communication channels where we are getting information. Can be on Instagram, can be on TikTok, can be on Snapchat, can be on X or Threads or Blue, wherever the fuck you are. I curse a lot, forgive me. Can be wherever you are online in a way that feels natural, like you're not performing. God bless Chuck Schumer, I suppose, but like when he does a TikTok, I don't wish ill on him most of the time. Like when he does a TikTok or a video, it's like, dude, clearly your 23-year-old staffer gave you a script and tried to explain a meme to you. Like it doesn't resonate because it's not true to who he is. Whereas when you see a politician who clearly is a consumer of the TikToks, like scrolls before bed, they understand how to be present online. That doesn't mean that every young person is good at the internet. But you can tell when it's natural for someone versus when it isn't. And I think especially for, like I say this again, I'm a peak millennial born in 1990. I have been thinking about how to cultivate a public persona on the internet since I was trying to decide what would go in my AIM away message. Some of you may be too young for that. But like, since I was 11, 9, I don't know. I've had an email address since I was 6. I had my MySpace top 8 of my friends when I was 13. In the same way that you've probably been on Instagram since you were probably pretending you were 13 and were actually 9, you know, or on Snapchat for 20 years, however long it's been. You have been thinking about how to present a version of yourself for public consumption or for social consumption since before your brain was fully formed, before our brains were fully formed. Now, do I think that's a good thing? No, I think we're pickled up here. But because we can, it feels more natural. We have always been campaigning for public attention and affection, whether it's as politicians or as like 16-year-old girls in high school. Again, good thing? I don't know. Reality. And a skill set that if done thoughtfully and strategically and intentionally can be used for good. So I think young leaders can bring young voters out, in part because of that faculty with communication.
Great. All right. Well, I'm going to let the next panel
Prove it.
fix
Okay.
politics and democracy.
Great.
But this was fascinating, and thank you for sharing all of these wise anecdotes and stories about what you've done, and look forward to watching Run for Something continue to evolve in the future.
Thank you for letting me ramble.
And I'm now going to pass it back to my colleague, Speaker DeVeo. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Amanda and Dan, for that inspiring conversation. It was really incredible to hear about the work of Run for Something and what it does in terms of helping young people see themselves as leaders, take the first step into public service, and translate ideas into action. We're excited to continue the conversation now with a panel of Massachusetts state representatives. You're not trying to tell me anything, are you, here? We all set? Okay, that was a joke, okay. Who themselves started their political journeys at a young age. They'll share what motivated them to run, the challenges they faced, and the lessons learned along the way. I also wanted, before I start to introduce them individually, I would also like to congratulate the members of the Massachusetts House of Representatives who are here today, and our Speaker Mariano and our Chair Ken Gordon. Yesterday, this body took up what I consider to be one of the most important issues of our time in this country and in Massachusetts. And I know you wake up every morning and say, well, what's the issue of the day? You know, I know even though I may be out of being Speaker of the House, I many times will think of that every day. What's going on today? And you find there's something different. Well, right now you will find that one of our most important issues that's addressing us as a state and as a country is that of early literacy. And I was so proud yesterday to see what the Massachusetts House of Representatives did to take a very difficult issue, to debate it and address it into what I consider is probably going to be one of the bills that is going to be looked at as a sample for other states to follow. So I have to tell you, and I mean this sincerely, because I've been waiting to see this happen. Matter of fact, I worked with one of our candidates for a thesis who was, and this was the issue that was the theme of her thesis. And I've learned a little bit about the issue, not only here, but around the country. And to see it handled the way it was, so congratulations and kudos to the members of our Massachusetts House. Congratulations. Why are you smiling? You okay?
We couldn't get it done while you were there.
Now that may bother people. Doesn't bother me a bit. We've got that type of relationship, don't we? Don't we?
Oh, yeah, no.
But let me just introduce some of the folks here who are serving on the panel here today. We first of all have the Chair of Ways and Means, Aaron Michlewitz. He's from the 3rd Suffolk District. He was appointed chair in 2019. Which I sometimes regret, but I was the person who appointed him. He's been a leader in so many different major initiatives, from the Student Opportunity Act to the ROE Act, economic development legislation, and of course, our state budget. When you take a look in terms of, again, what's going on in Washington, what's going on in our country, it's good to see, again, Massachusetts seems to stick out despite some of the obstacles that may be in the way in other states, that we're able to work together and get things done here in Massachusetts. I was also pleased to see, or should mention, which even before his time as the Chair of Ways and Means, his work on emerging technologies, which in terms of better known as Uber, and Airbnb, to put succinctly. He was really the person who really, I'd have to honestly say, educated me in terms of some of these technologies that were about to try to come into our state and what we needed to do to make sure that they were run properly and efficiently. And I have to congratulate him for that. He's a proud Northeastern University graduate. He's been selected by Boston Magazine as one of the most influential Bostonians. And, yeah, that is sort of a joke, isn't it? You asked for it, buddy, and I know it's coming back to me. But I'd have to also state that I think when history takes a look at government here in Massachusetts, they are going to find one of those mentions as one of the best leaders of our government here in Massachusetts was that man right there, Aaron Michlewitz, and that I mean sincerely. And next we have Representative Manny Cruz. Manny's from the 7th Essex District. And I think when you take a look at Manny, and for those of you who don't know, he's obviously a proud graduate of Northeastern University. But in addition to that, I think we're looking at a gentleman who probably be considered, or is considered as to be one of the rising stars, so to speak, in the Massachusetts legislature. Before working or being elected, he actually was a legislative aide out of this Salem area, I guess you could say, for a number of years, which prepared him, I think, extremely well. First got elected as a member of the local school committee in Salem. In the legislature, I think his focus is on educational equity, youth opportunity, and community leadership, just to name a few things. He's a committee that he serves on: transportation, the cannabis committee, emergency preparedness, and civil rights. I think you also can sort of gauge in terms of where a person is in terms of what committees they may be serving on. And I can tell you those are all very good committees, which show to me how well respected he is there. And I think he's going to be a person who's going to get things done here in Massachusetts. Representative, thank you for being here. Representative Tram Nguyen. If you read today's Boston Globe, in the business section, page 1, I still read it the old way, so that's the way I look at things. And you will see that we have one of our candidates for the 6th Congressional District with us here this evening that the Boston Globe had talked about, is one of the possibilities of being the first Asian American elected official that we've had from Massachusetts in Washington. And it's great to see her here today. She made history in 2018 as the first Vietnamese American woman elected to public office in Massachusetts. She's also been named by the Speaker as the chair of the House Committee on Climate and Sustainability. In addition to that, she is a graduate of the Northeastern University Law School and a proud graduate of Run for Something. I guess someone that we could look to as a very much a success in what she has done. I know she's always extremely busy, because every time I try to call her back after she calls me, she's always in an airport. So already she's also a very important person, not only in Washington, but throughout the country as well. But it's great to have you here as well, Representative, Madam Chair. Representative Sam Montaño. I talked to the representative earlier. She just assumed me tell her who you are. She wants me to get quickly, so and move on. She's nodding her head, but I don't think that that's possible. She's from the 15th Suffolk District. She's vice chair for Committee on Aging and Independence, and hopefully with that, you can think some laws to help people, senior citizens, you may want to think about as part of your, things to do list, if you could. But she's had a career, not only in her role now, but I think if you take a look at her past in terms of what she's been involved with and what she has, talked about as some of the important issues that we should address, in terms of housing affordability, equity, and climate resilience, I think are just a few. And I can tell you that, when I talk to some of the members of the present House, some of which I've gotten to know and some of which I've known for a number of years, she's extremely highly respected in terms of what her role is and what she has done in the House. So welcome, Representative. I now would like to welcome back Amanda Litman, who will moderate the panel as we explore what it means to start young in politics, build a career in public service, and leave with service. Amanda, take it away.
You guys get to hear from me so much today. While the representatives sit down, so we're going to have a chance for you all to ask some questions. So start marinating. I want to go Sam down the line. Tell me about what made you run for office.
Hello. Okay. Hi everyone. How did I decide to run for office? A lot of it is how I grew up. I grew up in Los Angeles, a part of Los Angeles that is historically very Latino, and I grew up with a dad who served in Operation Desert Storm, was a veteran, a Marine vet, struggled with substance use disorder. My family was my mom worked like 3 jobs. We were almost always on the verge of homelessness. And so I grew up this way, and I wondered why it was so hard, and why we had to struggle. And often a lot of my own dreams were put on hold so that I could support my family and I could come together and help them. And these experiences made me want to see more people who looked like me and had my experiences get involved. And I also went to college in 2008, and in California at that time, there was Prop 8, which was California banned gay marriage originally. There was Oscar Grant. So if you've seen Fruitvale, which is a film with Michael B. Jordan, but there was Oscar Grant who had been shot on BART. It was, we'd had Rodney King, but it was one of the other big instances where a black person had been a victim of gun violence. And we had DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, really ramping up under the Obama administration. And so my political background was kind of all fueled within that fire, and that's how I got really involved. And I came at it from an organizing lens more so than being put into the political machine. And I got into politics as a person who was elected much later in life, like in my late 20s. How old am I? Yeah. And so it's just been a slow trajectory. It's issues that have impacted me, things that I've wanted to work on, things that I've grown and learned about. And then, I've been blessed to have mentors who have invested in me and kind of pushed me in this direction. I don't think I would have ran for office if I didn't have people saying they would support me and help me, because they kind of dragged me kicking and screaming to fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, thank you for having me here tonight. It's always a pleasure, and I'm very blessed to come back to Northeastern and be with many of you here. My alma mater, and someplace I'm very proud of, being a city of Boston resident my entire life. And I'm also thankful to be with my colleagues here, all of which I am very lucky and blessed with to get to serve with every day. And they're representing their communities, and we're all working together to try to, do what's right for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But the reason I ran for office, a little different than with Sam. I think Sam was a little more issues-oriented in terms of her journey to want to run for office. Mine was more centered on where I was from. I grew up in the North End in Boston, born and raised, and as I was getting older into my 20s after college, I was getting very involved in local affairs, coaching. Coaching kids in sports, getting involved in kind of local neighborhood issues. And then I ended up working in government as well. I was working for Mayor Tom Menino while I was in college part-time, and then doing my co-op there. And then afterwards getting more involved in the mayor's office, I eventually got a job working for then Speaker Sal DeMacy, who was the state representative of the North End, who elevated to Speaker in 2004. And so his team called me up. They saw how active I was getting in terms of doing the local stuff, and they said, "Do you want to be involved? Do you want to come work at the State House?" And I went up to work at the State House and fell in love with the discussions of the day of working in the State House and all the back and forth related to trying to get things done there in that building. But more as time went on, it became clear that I wanted to be more involved in the conversations that were happening in my neighborhood and how to make a difference and how to make the neighborhood continue to be a special place, the place that I had grown up in, and want to making it something that was still a great place for people to live, to grow. And that was kind of the essence of why I just started even thinking about running for office, was how do I take that conversation and put it towards the main stage. And I think as you were talking about, you don't know what you're getting yourself into when you run for office. I wasn't ever a good public speaker. I'm still not a good public speaker. It was something that I didn't think was natural, or something that I was relatively shy, believe it or not, Mr. Speaker. I was relatively shy and didn't think it was something that I would want to do. My last name was Michlewitz also, growing up in the North End. That's not really an Italian last name. That's not necessarily what you think about when you're going to run for office out of the North End. And so, but the passion around being involved in the community and wanting to just grow that discussion further and take more of a leadership role in that thing led to eventually wanting to run for office. And that's why I ended up pulling the trigger when I was 30 years old as well.
Well, good evening. It is such an honor to be with all of you today and to be back at Northeastern. This place is already so much different than when I was attending. This building, 2018, you just couldn't have built it in 2016, President Aoun. Because, wow, this is stunning. It's an honor to be with all of you. I think, first and foremost, the colleagues that I have here are some of my dear friends, mentors, people who have supported me on my journey. I would not have run for public office if it was not for my lived experience. I was raised by a single mom who survived domestic violence. That violence extended to myself and my brothers. And growing up in a country where I had to watch my immigrant mom navigate systems, not knowing the language, and then as a very relatively young kid, have to advocate for her, I innately felt this sense of injustice that I didn't quite understand then, because by the time I had hit kindergarten, I had already experienced homelessness. I'd have to stand before judges and advocate for translators for my mother. And when I was at a doctor's appointment, talking to police officers, you name it, I felt that there was something wrong in this country, that young people had to experience this in the first place. And being abandoned by my father in this country, I think set me up with a level of anger and resentment that led to trauma in the classroom manifesting itself. And now as an education policymaker, like, I understand what happened to me was something that could have been avoided if we had the right types of systems in place. But that anger that I experienced, that I think eventually turned into passion for changing the system. It wasn't until I had a mentor in middle school. His name is Brad Malone, who's the conflict resolution teacher. I'm joined by another one of my educators in Dan Ehrman. We actually taught a class together at my middle school when I was here at Northeastern. And Brad was the person that, when I first went to his office, because I was in constant conflict between myself, my peers, and my educators, that it was the first time that I had met a response that wasn't detention, suspension, tracking me for the school to prison pipeline. As the conflict resolution teacher, he engaged in what's known as restorative justice. And Brad was the first person to ask me about who I was as a person. What were the things that I cared about? What was important to me? And he built this amazing relationship with me. And I think I'm grateful to Brad, and I tell him all the time, he saw gifts, talents, and assets in me that I didn't see in myself. And he started putting these leadership opportunities in front of me that I didn't really understand at the time in middle school. Middle school's already a tough time for a kid, but he asked me to be the captain of the wiffle ball team, the basketball team, the flag football team. He asked me to be a peer mediator, and I was like, why me? And I think he recognized that when I was getting in trouble, kids would follow me. So for good or for bad, I was a leader. But what I needed was a structure, someone to provide me with support and see me for my full self. And then he did this really funny thing in 7th grade where he pushed me to run for class senate. And this is one of those like formative memories where I remember having like the pit in my stomach, like, why is he suggesting that I do this? There's no way my peers view me as this type of leader. And I'll never forget my first election, I won unanimously. And it was in that transition period where I think my peers could see that I was becoming a different type of young man, that I was engaging with them differently because of the skills that I had developed. So I always credit Brad as being like the person who's planted that seed. And then throughout my journey as a young person, it just continued to grow because I got this amazing community behind me. So Salem is the reason why I continue to run for public office. Similar to the chairman, it's my beloved community, in the words of Dr. King. And when I think about like the why did I decide at 24 years old, 6 months after graduating from Northeastern, to run for Salem School Committee? It really was about the children and healing the system and making sure that I was taking all the skills that I had been developing over the 14 years of youth leadership, youth development work that I was doing, to really focus on applying that to a particular position, but articulating a clear message of urgency around public education. So I'm appreciative of the speaker raising the fact that we did what we did yesterday in terms of ensuring that every single child, that right to read that they have is actually going to be met, because we're going to put in front of them the tools and resources that they have. Every time that I look at our accountability data and what's happening with our Black and brown children, our low-income students, our immigrant students, I feel that same exact level of urgency that I felt back then when I decided to pull papers and run for school committee. And so everything I do is for the children, ancestors and descendants. I have 2 children now, and I think about the world that I want them to inherit and the type of leaders I want them to have. So, running for public office to me is a fulfillment, in part of a dream to be able to change that system and heal my old inner child, but truly to leave the world just a better place than I found it.
Such a pleasure to be here. I'm Tram Nguyen, and I always love being on panels with you all. I learn something new every time, and that's so fascinating. I'm really glad to be here. I haven't been back since I graduated from law school, and I think law school was actually where I got my political bug. The public interest program at Northeastern is #1 in the country for a reason. It brought me to public interest law, where I ended up working at Greater Boston Legal Services, serving survivors of domestic violence, low-wage workers, immigrants, people with disabilities, vulnerable people, you name it. And at the time, after I graduated, I actually couldn't afford to stay in Boston, so I moved to Andover. I grew up in the Merrimack Valley, and I moved back there and discovered that my representative was very interesting. In fact, she's your favorite person, right? Both of you? He wanted police officers to stop anyone who looks illegal. He was anti-LGBTQ, he was anti-union, he was anti-reproductive rights, you name it. And as someone who dedicated my career to uplifting the most vulnerable, working to make sure that we are building a more welcoming and inclusive community for all, I found that to be very offensive. So I often say that I'm an accidental politician, because I was a litigator. I loved my job. I never thought I was going to run. But what I've learned about my representative was absolutely stunning, and I couldn't sit back any longer. And so after I'd been in Andover for several years, in fact, I was going into the State House to advocate for paid family medical leave and increase the minimum wage to $15. I remember talking to the chairman of Labor and Workforce at the time, Paul Broder, and he looked at me and he was like, "Who is your rep?" And when he found out who the rep was, he said, "If you run against him, I'll pass every bill on this table." And he lied, by the way. But that was when the seed was planted in my head that this was possible. And I love what we were saying earlier. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're getting into until you actually run. But it was the support of the people, and because I was working on legislation in the legislature, I knew many of the legislators and got encouragement from them, got encouragement from my colleagues, from my family, to really consider this, consider seriously, to take that leap of faith. And a lot of people asked, well, why aren't you running for select board or school committee? And I was very clear. I don't want to be in elected office. I just want him out. So that was why I made that decision to run in 2018, and it was the best decision. But honestly, no one thought I had a chance, because I grew up also, I came to the US when I was 5 years old as political refugees with my family. We grew up in public housing. I did not have the resources, and I think that is one of the biggest hurdles for people, young people, people from under resource communities, marginalized communities, is that we typically don't have the support. But luckily, because of the schools I went to, the support system at my work, and the work that I've been able to do in terms of building advocacy and coalition building throughout the state for some of the bills that I mentioned, I was able to pull together a coalition of people who came out in support of me for that year, and we were able to beat this 8-year incumbent by 10 points. And that was incredible, because when I first started running, he said, "Who's this little girl running against me?" And he didn't even take me seriously. And that's been my journey, and I'm very, very excited. As the speaker mentioned, that I just announced my congressional race, looking to bring my experience, both my lived experience and my professional experience, to the federal level, to make sure that we uplift voices, to make sure that we continue to build this commonwealth where everyone feels welcome and that we are taking care of our people. And that's the vision that I have, and I'm very excited to have the support of my colleagues here, and very excited to see what this journey takes me.
Okay, put yourself in the headspace of your first campaign. What surprised you most about that experience? Whoever's got an answer first.
I'll go.
Okay.
What surprised me the most about that experience was that I could do it, to be honest with you. When you start out on it, it's very, you learn, it's running for office, particularly the first time running for office, is one of the greatest things you can ever do for yourself, to learn about yourself and to push your limits as a person, and do things that you don't think you're actually capable of doing. You actually, as you grow into it, you become that person that is the candidate, and you become the person that is doing these things that you never thought you could do. And it was almost an outer body experience in some respects because of that, how that switch, that light switch that happened over time. And it was, but the other part about it is how time consuming, and how, no one understands what you're going through as much as the candidate does, as much as you rely on very important volunteers and people that are helping you, bring you along the way, and you can't do it without them. No one has the same experience of it as you do as a candidate, because everything is on your shoulders. You wake up, you eat, sleep, and breathe it. It's exhausting. I lost 17 pounds during my first race. But if you go all in and you give it to that whole feeling, that whole thing, it's to this day, it's still the greatest experience I've had in politics, is that first run. And I think many of us kind of feel that same way, because as you grow into the job and do other things, there's still nothing like that first time where you have your friends, your core family, your supporters, the people that are just in it for you, because they want you to succeed and they want it to happen. And there's not like special interest involved. There's no other outside forces involved. It's really just a core group of people that want to make sure that you succeed, and you grow with that whole experience. And so to me, that is probably the thing that surprised me the most.
Other answers?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And in addition to that, you're really, frankly, surprised as to who supports you and who don't. Mm-hmm. There are people that you think will be your biggest supporters, and crickets. And then there are people who are just going all in for you, and you've never met them before, but for some reason they're inspired by your story. They're inspired by you. And so that actually makes you learn more about yourself, so that, as the chairman was saying, you learn about your skill sets, and you learn how to build these relationships to then build on for later elections as well. But I think that that's always surprising to me. It's like you never know who's going to come out for you and who will just sit back.
Disappoint you.
And disappoint you. Exactly.
I want to build on something that the chairman was talking about, which is I think the thing that surprised me the most was the level of isolation you experience as a candidate. People want to hear from you as the candidate. I had to knock 17,000 doors the first time that I ran for school committee at large in my beloved community in Salem. And when you do it the first time, it's pretty ragtag. For me, It was myself, my then fiance, and a stroller, not with 2 kids, but 2 cats. We adopted 2 kittens.
It's unhinged.
And so we were knocking doors all throughout Salem, and I did have some folks that were volunteering for me, but for the most part, no one is going to want the seat for you more than yourself. You have to go out there and do the work. And so I just remember like all those nights where I'd leave working at the legislature and then having to come right into door knocking and spending so many hours away from friends and family. And, the isolation can hit you pretty hard. So I think, one of the things that I would stress to anybody who's thinking about running for public office is to understand that you need to do 2 things. You need to give yourself grace. And then also, I have to stress the importance of like self-care. And I don't mean that in like the most performative way. I learned this lesson the hard way in my first campaign. So coming from Salem, I loved playing basketball. I was a Boys and Girls Club kid. I was a coach, I was a mentor, and that's how I really started building my own community. Most of the friends that I have are from playing basketball. One of my little brothers, a dear friend of mine named Andy, who I carry with me to this day, I'll never forget, it was August 24th. We were in recess, and my boss at the time was actually going to run for Congress in the CD3, and I was headed into work like any other day, and I was thinking about the campaign and like all the things that I had to do after my work day. And my best friend, Emmy, called me to tell me that Andy had killed himself that morning. And I remember what I did was I like pushed it down as soon as he told me. It was like I was outside of my own body, and I just went to work, acted like nothing had happened. I just took my constituent calls. I was doing everything that I was supposed to do for my boss. And it was like 2:30, and we're in the middle of our staff meeting, and I just start breaking down crying. And she had no idea what was going on. And I remember the people in that office that work for our dear friend Paul McMurtry, the staff, my fellow staff, wrapping their arms around me and just embracing me in that moment. And my boss told me to go home and like go be with Andy's family. And I suspended my campaign for 2 weeks. And to be honest with you, I thought I wasn't going to finish the race. But it was the 2 weeks where I gave myself that grace for self-care to be able to spend time with Andy's family, to help raise money to actually bury him, and then to eulogize him in the end. That his family reminded me that like the way that Andy viewed you, I had to read like a speech that he wrote. He was the Youth of the Year like myself, and he talked a lot about me as his mentor. What his family reminded me was that as hard as things will get for you, is that people are watching you, even when you think that they aren't. And I didn't realize that Andy was watching me. So my message to all of you as you go forward in life is to just remember, like, you might have these amazing opportunities. You're at a prestigious university. You might take on leadership, but don't forget where you came from and the people that are around you, and just know that people are watching you when you're stepping into your journey of leadership. And that it's okay to just pick up the phone sometime and to remind people that you love them.
Sam, do you have an answer?
Thanks for sharing that, Manny. I'm curious why you brought your cats door knocking with you, though.
Lunacy.
I think for me it was that it was a reminder of how much I love people and like how much I care about people. So I sit in Division 2, which is where all the Republicans sit, and I have a great time there. Actually, because I think the hardest part of everything now is that we don't talk to each other. Like nobody wants to have a hard conversation. Nobody wants to have someone disagree with them. And the part of the campaign that I think, and I came from community organizing, so I was already kind of having a lot of conversations, but like underneath all this, I'm also heavily tattooed. And it was like really hot in the summer. And I was wearing a Camelback, a stupid little bucket hat, and like my short sleeves going around with shorts on because I was biking everywhere because I live in JP. And that's just the stereotype. And I was going everywhere and knocking on the doors and having these amazing conversations with people who were, even if we didn't agree, they were very appreciative that you came to their door and that you were trying to have this conversation. You were trying to engage them. And when I was working at the Mass Cultural Council for a hot sec, which is where I was like, oh, I hate grant making. I got to travel across the state of Massachusetts, and everyone thinks that we're like a super blue across the whole state, but it's a pretty diverse state politically. Like there's when people are like, why doesn't a super majority of Democrats pass anything? It's because there's a lot of different ways to be a Democrat, and there's a lot of different communities out there, right? But I think that what running for something showed me, not the organization, whatever, showed me was that there's still a really big part of humanity that wants to connect and wants to be in community with other people. And so by running for office, I learned to love my community in a way that I didn't think I could love my community. And even the people now who I'm like, oh, I want to strangle you. Like, why are you so difficult? I'll walk around the park later and we'll say hi. Like, they'll pick up something for me. They need a favor. I'm going to walk their dog, right? Like, that's the beauty of, I think, being a state rep, is that we represent these like really tight, small communities, and there's so much variety within them that you go to work with like the deep desire to improve lives and to make a difference and to feel like you are being supported and loved. And I'm someone who has a hard time like accepting like outward, like when the speaker was complimenting me, I think I was gonna die. Like, I don't accept love like that. And so that's what I learned from my first campaign, was that there's so much that unites us more than there is that divides us, and which is like the corniest thing you could ever say, right? Like, but here we are.
I once got a chance to interview a current member of Congress, but former state senator Sarah McBride, and I asked her like about running for office. One of the things that surprised her the most, and she said, "If you want to fall in love with the place you live, run for office. Like, it puts you in touch with your community in such a powerful way." So we're in a room full of young people, college kids, students, adults. You're adults. You're adults. One of the things I think that there is a common, I think, misconception about, with especially people in their late teens, early 20s, is that they think this is all bullshit, that none of this matters, that like the system is broken and it is irreparable and cannot be fixed, and what is the point of even engaging? Now, clearly the folks in this room do not feel this way, because you wouldn't be here if you did. But I imagine that a lot of your friends feel that way, or people you talk to. I see some nods. Give them the talking points to fight back on that. Why does it matter right now? Why is it not broken? How are we going to fix it? Small questions.
Wow, deep question here. Well, first of all, I applaud you all for being here, because civic engagement at this level is just so key, and you're going to be the messengers for us. You can see, honestly, it's been an honor of a lifetime to be serving in the Massachusetts House of Representatives these past 7 years, because I've traveled. So the speaker joke about me, every time he calls me, I'm at the airport, because I go across the country. I do a lot of training, recruitment of women, immigrants, newcomers, and others to run for office, many of whom are young people as well. And I can honestly say that Massachusetts is leading in so many different areas. And that's because we have such an engaged electorate, right? We're leading in healthcare, education, clean energy, you name it, and bio. And it's because of the fact that we are a very educated state, and we have people who genuinely care. We're one of the few legislatures in the country that's full-time, which actually allows us to do a lot of great work. And we want people to understand that there are 7,000 to 8,000 bills going through the legislature every 2 years, which is every session. There are so many things that you can get involved with, and you need to just get on the ladder of engagement. You don't need to run for office right out of the bat. You can find an issue that you care about, learn about them. The Massachusetts Legislature website has information. You can even click on a bill so that you can get updated on when they have a hearing. There's so many different ways to get engaged, and there are also so many advocacy groups that you can get involved with so that you can push for the issues that you care about. And that's how we save our democracy. That's how we save our civil rights. That's how we save and keep Massachusetts the thriving community that it is. And so I encourage you all to just jump on this ladder of engagement and get your friends to do the same. Because as you can see, we're all very passionate public servants, but we can't do that without the engagement from folks like yourselves.
Yeah, so I think one of the things, the framing of the question is about the context that we're in right now. This is twice now with this particular administration. I'm going to take the long view, and what I would just encourage folks to do is to step into your ancestral courage. I'm the first Afro-Indigenous Latino state representative that my community's ever had. And when I think about my ancestors and who they were the indigenous peoples of the Caribbean, the Taínos, who experienced a real genocide that became a paper genocide. And then my enslaved ancestors who were born free in Africa and brought here against their will. And then through colonization, I have European ancestry. And I can trace back in Salem the ships that would go and engage in the triangular trade. And somewhere along the way, one of my ancestors was loading sugarcane into a ship that was going to Salem and help us build the empire that we have. And now their descendant is writing the laws of the Commonwealth. So when I think about like models for inspiration, I think about what our ancestors were doing. Our ancestors long ago were abolitionists. They were on the Underground Railroad. They fought against Jim Crow. They fought for the sovereignty of First Peoples. And the arc of justice, it's a long one. Sometimes it bends back towards injustice, but fundamentally, we have to have a relentless belief in the possible. So I have a vision for what I believe this country could be, and I'm holding on to that. And I'm asking people to do the same exact thing, because we're all standing on the shoulders of giants who came before us, and our mission, our charge, we're only here for a finite time on this earth, is to remember that we are somebody's ancestor. And what is going to be the thing that you want to do to leave for your descendants? And I don't mean your own children. That's a choice that you make at some point in your own life. But I view all those who come after me as my descendants. I don't have the time to wallow in what feels impossible. Right now, we need to build a future state that is completely different than what we're experiencing now. And so I put the call to action to everyone, not just to consider running for something, getting involved, but I mean, I don't have to tell Gen Z and millennials, we're out in the streets, we're protesting, we're writing legal briefs, we're in the courtrooms, we're doing everything that we need to do. And I just say, keep that faith and that ancestral courage in your heart. And if you don't know what that ancestral courage looks like because of your own history, like I tell you, the most rewarding thing that I've done is explore my own familial history to understand why I'm the type of leader that I am. It goes right back to my great-great-grandmother, who was a freed black woman in the Dominican Republic who owned 140 acres. And she kept her community safe at a time in which, in the Dominican Republic, there was a lot of anti-blackness. And so I know that I'm the leader that I am because of my ancestors, so I root myself in that.
So it's not just young people that think it's bullshit. There's a lot of older people too that think it's bullshit, because some of it is bullshit. To be honest with you, I mean, there is you got to cut through the bullshit. That's the job of the voter and of the job of the electorate is to figure out who's giving the bullshit and who's actually trying to give you the real. And the message I would just say is that engagement is a two-way street. It's incumbent upon elected officials, folks like ourselves, to engage with our constituency. It's incumbent upon us to be accessible. It's incumbent upon us to be available and to be able to have a conversation with every voter that wants to have one. But it is also incumbent upon the voter and the electorate to come and engage with us. I have countless events in my district. I represent a very small geographical district of downtown Boston, so I can walk everywhere and get everywhere. And I try to go to everything, and I try to have as many events as I possibly can to engage with older voters, kids that go to Suffolk University or Emerson in my district, and everything in between. And I don't discriminate on what that may be. I try to find the right, different ways to do that. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It's the nature of beast, but it's my job to keep trying. It is also the job of everyone on that constituency to try to engage with me and make sure that I know what they're feeling and what they're thinking about this issue X, Y, and Z. Because it does have to work both ways. We as elected officials can do so much to make sure that we're there. But if no one's listening, if no one's talking, then we don't even know how to vote. We won't know what issues are important to which generation or which constituencies of ours, and therefore we're flying blind when we're making decisions. And we don't want to fly blind when we're making decisions. We want to be able to have an educated discussion on exactly what is important, whether it is in a transportation conversation or an environmental discussion on climate resiliency, or on pro-choice versus pro-life discussions and decisions that we're making, and everything in between there too. So it really is about the two-way street, about making sure that we are working with each other, because as Sam said, the engagement is there. It's possible. We got to work at it, and everyone's got to work at it.
That's what I was going to talk about.
Sorry.
No, I agree. Like, we picked a really difficult form of government. We picked democracy. That's hard. That's a lot of work. It expects you to show up. It expects us to show up. It expects you to put in time. It expects you to read the paper. It expects you to watch the news. It expects you to fact check. It expects you to talk to your neighbors. Like, democracy is a lot of work. So if we don't want it, we could have like a monarchy, right? If you want to check out, we could have a different form of government. We could soon, maybe. If we want to keep having this form of government, we have to keep showing up. We have to keep talking. We have to keep having these conversations. If you're not emailing me, I don't know what you think. And if I were a bad rep, I would read the emails and be like, oh, this is what my community thinks. And I know that that's not true, because the people who are most likely to email me, the people who are most likely to reach out, are the one, like, often the squeaky wheel, the loud voice, right? And so I have to do the work of getting on the ground and talking to other people, lest I have a really distorted perception of what my community wants, which is often true, right? Like, if I just get out there and no one has talked to me and I think I'm making a decision, like, I'm setting myself up for failure, and I'm setting my community up for failure. So I don't love a template. Like, don't send me a template. I would prefer if you sent me a nice little, even if you're only sending me 2 sentences about why you care about something, I want to know why you care about it and how I can make that message when I'm going to talk to the chairman and saying, like, hey, I want to move this piece of legislation. Here's the specific examples I've heard from my community, not just a template. Here's why people care about it. Here's why I think I'd like to help move this along for the next couple of years. But it is. I am getting paid to do this. But I need you to also help me do it so that we have a better Commonwealth, so that we have a stronger infrastructure, so that we are creating a diverse, well-rounded piece of legislation that's creating a piece of legislation for the whole Commonwealth is insane. Like, how are we supposed to create something vague enough to fill all the different types of needs and specific enough to, address the issue, right? Mm-hmm. It's crazy, but that's why you need to participate, and that's why you need to provide more specific examples than I could die on the hill of don't send me a template. Just please write me a sentence.
I have about 1,000 more questions, but I want to open it up to this group to make sure we have lots of time for any of you all. Do we have, raise your hands, I guess? Yeah, let's start over here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I feel like I've been learning a lot more about you guys, local politics. I know I'm curious in a post-Trump world, and also in this, I'm curious, the direction that the Democratic Party is going to go, not only in this administration, but in a post-Trump world. And I've been seeing a lot of people talking about how in order for Democrats to be elected, we need to move back towards the center and focus on, capturing a broader vote instead of focusing on more progressive issues. I've been hearing that a lot. And I was wondering what your guys' thoughts were on balancing, these social issues that are so important and inspiring, but also electability, and how you can appeal to a more broader range of voters.
Are you with the Globe? No, that's an excellent question that anybody that can give you, that thinks they have the exact right answer on that is not being honest with you, because that is a moving target discussion right now that we're all trying to figure out throughout this process. And whether it is on the local government standpoint, or as you talk about what's going on a national level, we are having, as a Democratic Party, having some real hard discussions with each other about where this should go. And there's a wide array of views on exactly what is the right piece. I'll just say what I think is you can't do anything of the good stuff and the positive stuff if you're not electable. And you got to have an electability standpoint to appeal to a broader enough voting base that you can get elected.
it's great to be able to stand on principles, and we should all stand on our principles and not waver from what those principles are. But we also need to make sure that if we want to fight for the things that we really care about, we have to make sure that we are talking to a wider group of electorate. If we're not talking to those folks, then we're just going to be, we're going to be out in the street, saying the same thing, but not having any effect on any type of possible change. So it is. But it is a back and forth. It is not an easy conversation to be having, and with the Trump administration really putting stress on the system in a whole host of variety of ways, in places and areas that I don't think anybody really fully imagined or thought was really going to happen. Where there was obviously the alarms were ringing, but there certainly still wasn't seeing what we're getting from every stress of the system taking place on us, and us trying to manage it from a state government standpoint has been very challenging. It is trying to make sure that we provide the best services we possibly can, which is the first and foremost discussion that we're having. And then on the second of it, where are we going to move from an electorate discussion and have to find a pathway to make sure that we take back the White House, we take back Congress, and we maintain here in the state a strong Democratic majority. And every district has a little different spin on that. Every district, every member of the House here comes from a different section of the state, of the Commonwealth, and our constituency may have a little different spin. Sam's is much more progressive than mine, necessarily. And mine's more to the left, but it's not as far left as Sam is. But me and Sam have to work together to kind of figure out exactly what is the right thing to do for the Commonwealth and for our total population of the Commonwealth. And so we're trying to find those common grounds and those works together, but it's not an easy thing, and it's certainly something we're grappling with.
So I'm not an elected official, so I can say whatever I want. Can I just tell you, this conversation drives me insane? Because one, the answer is all of the above. Because we actually do. We need to be a party that can win in New York City, because we lost. New York City moved red by like 10 points in 2024. We also need to be a party that can win in Kansas and Nebraska and Texas and Iowa, which means different kinds of candidates for different places, and that's okay. And this idea that there is some magic set of words or policies that you could spout as a candidate that would win some mythical voter is like so far from how people consume information, and especially how they engage in politics. There is this quiz that just went up earlier this week by like the American Electorate Center. If you Google like American voter quiz, it will show you, and it's 20 people, and it shows like their name, their demographic, like Jessica, 30 years old, black woman, 3 positions on policies. Who do you think she voted for? And they do this for like 20 different types of folks. The answers are unhinged. It's like, this person hates abortion, loves immigrants, really wants porn to be illegal. They voted for Kamala. It's like, what are we talking about here? People consume political information in such a wildly ridiculous way from the way everyone in this room does. And they think about their vote in a way that is totally irrational. It is not just about any particular policy or issue. It is a sense of who the candidate is and what do they believe, and do they believe what they believe? And that is the key. My rebuttal to all of this debate, because there was like a big report that came out this week from one of the more centrist PACs. It was like, Democrats just need to be more moderate. It's like, great, find the candidates who genuinely believe that and run them and prove it. Because I can tell you, I run the largest, this is on my soapbox now, I run the largest candidate pipeline in the country. And there is almost none of them who are running for office because they think, better things probably aren't possible. What if we thought smaller? So if you can find candidates who genuinely believe that and want to make that the thrust of their campaign, great. Run them and prove it. Until then, what you're encouraging people is to lie or to perform a version of political participation that we know, especially right now, is not what voters want. Because more than anything else, as I talked about earlier, voters don't like being lied to, they don't like bullshit, and they don't like when politicians seem to be selling them something. I don't like Trump. I think Trump's a bad person. But he seems to believe what he says. And voters believe it because he seems to believe it, even if he's lying. I think that disconnect, part of the reason people are so frustrated with the Democratic Party right now, not these lovely leaders, but the National Democratic Party, is it because it feels like so many of our national leaders are selling them a thing, not telling them what they believe. I'm like, no, be who you are. Be what you believe.
Can I
Please.
think that to the points that both of you made, it's relationships. If you can't have a good relationship, you're probably a bad elected official.
Yep.
The reason I think that the chairman, who's likely to be a leader in the House in the future, is able to get so much done is because Aaron is good at relationships. And if you don't call people back, you don't follow through, you don't do what you're going to say, people stop trusting you. And I think that's been our problem in the Democratic Party, is that we've been bad at relationships and we haven't been a good partner to the people that we're serving. And so I think that even if we could figure out the right thing to say, we've been bad partners.
And I just want to add, too, that these labels are also very problematic, right? What's progressive to some may be moderate to others. And we were just talking about the different districts. We were talking about the different areas, even the different states that we're in. So to box us in these things, it's just not practical for us.
Yeah.
And so I think what Democrats really need to do is better message ourselves. And I think that's the issue, is that we could talk about very progressive things, but in a very pragmatic way that resonate with people so that they know that we care about you. We care about your bread and butter issue. We care about affordable housing. We care about you putting food on the table and being able to afford healthcare, transportation, et cetera. But that is the issue, is that, like, how do you define progressivism? Like, you know, it is a very vague term. But at the end of the day, it's about instilling hope. And you were saying earlier that, like, that sense of, like, who are you doing this for? Your why and your authenticity. And that's what helps you relate to people and build those relationships so that you can then get elected.
Ditto to many of the things that I heard here today. There's a lot of people who are getting very wealthy off of this conversation. So if I had, like, my spin on it, it would be like the consultant class. You just got to take a step back for a little bit of time, because, like, quite frankly, like, the whole exercise that they're doing, it's not really a valuable thing at the national level. I think when you examine how movements are built, right? So I think the rep just talked about hope. Like Marshall Gantz and his framework of leadership, the movements that have been built organically, many of them center around things like hope. And then, like, what do you build out from there? You build out multiple movements with an agenda, you engage with the stakeholders. So I actually think that, like, the solution for the party itself, it's not going to come from the elected leaders, from the traditional consultant class or anything else. It's going to come from the electorate. The electorate's going to come out and they're going to tell you what you want, and that's going to look different in all 50 states and across different communities. So what I will say is, when I examine movements that are successful from an electoral standpoint, we're here at a college campus, right? You don't have to like Turning Point USA, but you're here for the academic exercise of case studying what they did to be successful and in their vision in a 4-year period, which they wanted to move the youth vote 10 points by 2030. They did it from 2020 to 2024 in the 7 key swing states. And I think one of the things that I've observed, and again, it's an observation, I've done that case, I've gone in and examined it, is that too many folks that were, like, boxed into the traditional kind of format, they didn't think that that was possible, and they just ignored it. And now what I'm seeing is that there's a resistance to learning the lessons from what made the other side successful, which I do think is in part short-term planning and then long-term vision. I was in Professor Ehrman's class when we were talking about the Heritage Foundation when they started. This is a 60-year strategy that goes all the way back to Barry Goldwater and the others. This is not like an accident that happened with the Republican Party and the conservative movement. When we got 3 terms from our folks during the New Deal, they were coming together and sitting in rooms and saying, what do we need to do to ensure that we're building the next generation of lawyers and folks that can go on the bench, become Supreme Court justices? How do we take it over? And for the most part, if you examine the conservative movement over 60 years, they've been largely successful. Sometimes the execution, not very good. They didn't get the results that they wanted on the court for a very long time. But then they found that lightning moment where they got the right candidate at the right time with the Senate Majority Leader who was willing to block Barack Obama from appointing someone and breaking those traditions. And so what I would just name is, like, for Democrats going forward, there has to be some type of vision that's built in collaboration with the electorate around what's your 50-year strategy. I'm planning on being here for another 50 years, regardless of what the people in office are saying right now. They're not going to remove me from the country. I'm going to come forward with my community, with my coalition, which is in Salem, my colleagues here. We're going to build it, but we need your help. And that means that you have to be a critical friend. There's an outside and an inside game. There are things that I can do as a legislator, and there are things that you can do as party activists, as individuals volunteering on campaigns, and then as prospective future candidates. But the point that Rep. Montaño raised about relationships, we have to center relational organizing on everything that we do. And if you just keep drawing away from the currency of what connects you and me together, what I'll name is that we have also caused tremendous harm to each other, and we can't restore each other's dignity. So now we've stopped having conversations. So I do think that there is an important element here about like a radical empathy of being able to have conversations with each other, which are going to be very difficult, not on issues, just about like past practice and what we did really wrong in order to inform a future strategy and vision.
Okay, I was told last question, but we're going to do 2 more. Oh my God, we have so many questions. Okay, can we do 3 more? Sure. Okay, but we're gonna do speed round answers. Okay, the young woman in the white T-shirt here first. Yeah, you.
Okay, great. Hi, thank you so much for this inspiring conversation. My name is Christine, and I'm actually an assistant professor in design, democracy, and civic learning, cool. So very relevant to everything that you've been saying. And from the standpoint of a faculty member, someone in higher education, I would really love to know. Well, first, I really appreciate that you acknowledge what a difficult moment this is for our young people, not only for the reasons of feeling like the system is really broken and not knowing if they want to participate in it, but just because it's a really scary moment to be thinking about how to participate, especially in more powerful ways. And on this point of really rebuilding the muscle for having relationships and having difficult conversations, I really wanted to know what each of you thought about what are the core capacities right now that young people, students, should be building so that they can have the courage to have difficult conversations or have relationships in their community. And how do you think faculty members and educators can help instill those capacities? Thank you.
That's a deeply thoughtful question, but we're gonna try rapid fire answers.
Experiential learning is probably the fastest way to accelerate the students in here and their learning journeys as emerging leaders. So continuing to push folks to experiences that, again, I think we have a good system here at Northeastern to evaluate those opportunities, but making sure that folks understand that there is like real pragmatic positions out there that you can go and pursue when you're out on co-op and you want to go have that good field experience. And then there are others that are just like, it's a resume check. You're really not going to get a lot out of it, but it seems prestigious. So, you know, I would make that push as faculty to really have the students explore. And then the second piece that I would push folks on is like, I do think that we have to empower the students while they're here to engage in being like restorative resolvers, giving them community mediation-based training so that they feel equipped to resolve conflict in a way that's aimed at policy development, movement building, because I think that that's a thing that I got that experience outside of my studies by taking those types of trainings, and they've paid dividends, but all of our young people should have the opportunity to be able to do that.
One more, do either of you have an answer?
I'm on 20 milligrams of Lexapro. It really helps. No, curiosity. Make sure that you're coming at something with curiosity. Like ask questions, follow up. Don't just talk about yourself.
Okay, we're gonna keep going because we could do this for like a million years. The young person in the back, yes, you in the corner. Yes. Young, old, I don't know. I have bad eyes.
I'm Jeffrey Franchetti. I'm a student organizer in Boston. This is more of a policy-oriented question, but also, of course, Litman, I love you. I love your movement, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I'm not just saying that because, you know, it's kosher to say that at the beginning of a question, whatever. So we're all students here. I don't know, how many people in the room are, like, from Massachusetts? We're kind of under your purview, kind of, as students in Boston. We're going to be here for 4 years, maybe 5, maybe longer. And right now, I know private and public universities are changing things related to DEI, protest policy, a lot of stuff basically to appease the Trump administration. And recently, people like MIT have said directly no. But, you know, universities are going to have a differing response, and I feel like there's going to be people who get hurt by that. Tufts had someone get kidnapped, and, you know, I'm from New York, so I have friends who experienced crazy stuff at Columbia. Is there any push by the legislation to potentially protect students for like protest policy, DEI, anything?
Let's do one answer up here.
Yeah, my short answer would be that here in the Commonwealth, your First Amendment rights are being protected by the Attorney General's office. And as a Commonwealth at the highest levels, the Speaker, Senate President, the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, they've all said, from our perspective, diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of our work. We're not backing down in that regard. I think it's a shame that some of the private institutions are willing to bend the knee to this president. He's not going to be around forever. And so, you know, on my end, you know, what I can commit to as a legislator is being vigilant about the things that I see are not going well with the interactions between our students and institutions. I visit Salem State, which is in my backyard, pretty frequently, and I ask the students all the time, even though I have a great relationship with my former predecessor, the president of the university, I'm very clear, like, I want to make sure that students' rights are being protected. I went to an event in which folks were protesting the war in Gaza, and, you know, there was a campus police officer who was like, I'm going to arrest you for being on the Civic Engagement University's stage and protesting and disrupting an event. And I saw how the president handled it. He told them, this is the Civic Engagement University of the Commonwealth. And I was like pretty pleased. And then I met with the students afterwards to say, I want to hear what your experience is outside of that and whether or not you feel like your institution is stifling speech. And so, you know, I think that the main thing that I would say is, like, I haven't seen any of my colleagues that are backing down from that fight. I would like to see the private institutions match our commitment because Massachusetts is one of the few places that I actually see standing up to this administration in that regard.
Let's do one more. The sweater, yeah. And if we keep it fast, we can take one more.
Hi, thank you so much. This has been super interesting, especially as someone who is not from Massachusetts. Personally, I'm from Pennsylvania, and I'm in one of the counties that was considered most integral to the 2024 election, which is super awesome and not a lot of pressure at all. But I know that a lot of you guys talked about, like, the genesis of your political identities coming from your own personal lived experience and then, like, cultural identities. And I think a good way maybe to wrap this up is also talking about how, like, you mentioned taking care of yourself. And I know a lot of rhetoric going out politically right now, especially from the far right versus the far left, is a lot of identity-based attacks, specifically like immigrants, LGBTQ people, and then being myself, like, part of that community, as well as the youngest of a family of all girls in a very Republican-dominated space. I was wondering if you had any advice for young people to kind of transform that, like, really paralyzing fear into action, or how we can take care of ourselves. We're hearing a lot of rhetoric that kind of downplays our identities and a lot of our own, like, personal experiences.
Are you looking at me because I have a lot of identities?
No. I was just seeing who wants to go first on this one.
But yes.
Okay, I think I'm like in 5 caucuses because I'm gay, brown, a woman, non-binary, I don't know, whatever, progressive. Only 5, yeah. My mom is very proud of me. She's not. I think that my whole thing is community, right? Like, I think if you go around assuming that, if you listen to the people trying to attack your identities and you're not trying to build relationships with them, like, and maybe this is my perspective, right? Like, put yourself in situations where you have conversations, where people can get to know you, where you can, like, dispel a lot of these misconceptions and, like, words that people are using to make you feel like your identity is not respected or validated, and have those hard conversations. Because for the most part, if you're taking in my perspective, if you're taking all this off the internet, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot. So stick yourself in rooms with people, and put yourself in rooms with community, and push yourself to have conversations with people who you don't think that you would get. I sit next to this Republican man, David DeCoste, and every day he asks me about my dad because he knows my dad is in recovery. We never vote the same. He says crazy things sometimes, but he always says, "How's your dad? How are you? Say hi to your dad for me." And they know and recognize my identities and I know that because they make jokes at me, right? I'm like, oh, okay, you see me, right? I think that we have to make the space for those kind of conversations, and we have to make the space for those kind of evolutions. And maybe you're not there yet, and you don't want to make the space for those kind of things. But I think if we're not doing that, and if other people aren't having those conversations, you're kind of going to end up in a really sad place. That's how I've navigated it, at least, right? I love people.
I just want to add that this generation is going to be one of the toughest generations to ever exist because of what you deal with on a daily basis from a social media perspective in particular, and just how easy it is to attack people when you can't connect with them directly. And the best way to Sam's point, the best way to confront that is to reach the people from a connective standpoint that's beyond words on a keyboard or in a phone or whatever it may be, and find those spaces that you can build comfort and build growth with it. But it's awful. I mean, I'm old enough now that I first got elected right when Facebook was kind of taking off in 2008, 2009. That's how old I am. All right, and I didn't have to deal with that first wave of it from when I was young, dealing with it. These folks are a little younger than me, and they had to go through that wave in a different way. And the next generation, your generation, as you get older and start running for office and stuff like that, are going to have to deal with it in an even worse way. And it is scary. It's a scary thing. I don't like where it continues to evolve. But we need to cut through that, and we need to continue to find ways to cut through that, and that is to stay a little more engaged in conversations like this, in conversations that aren't comfortable with people that you may not 100% agree with all the time. That's okay to disagree, just as long as we're doing it in a way that's polite and building progress long term.
It's been a theme of things that I've said around the village, my community. Right, so you're hearing community, mutual aid, find the people that you're close to, be willing to be brave in particular spaces. And then what I would say to fill your own cup, because you need to do that, you got to give yourself psychological safety, is that I think you do have to identify the people that you want to be your mentors that share those lived experiences. I know that there's a collection of folks that when I'm not feeling right, I can pick up the phone and I can talk to these mentors. Many of them who I met while I was a student at Salem State and here at Northeastern. And those people genuinely care about me as the person, not me as the politician and what I can do for them or anything like that. It's not transactional. It really is those relationships that I value. So, I know that I can call my big sister Juana at any time, no matter what I'm going through, and she's going to be there for me. So if you haven't found that mentor yet, I encourage you to do so. That's a really important thing. I'm lucky that I have at least one of my mentors here in the building with me now. Dan and I, we grab lunch, we grab breakfast. We're overdue. I know. I'm paying for the next one. Yes, I'm there. I can pay. But those mentors, I think, are really important because when I think about who my elders are and what they have taught me, many of them have lived through things that I draw strength from, and then they also learn a lot from me. So go seek out those mentors and those support systems.
So we are 10 minutes over time. I think you all are hanging around for a little bit. I don't know about your schedules, but if they can, I know they'd be delighted to stay and keep answering questions from you all, because at least I will say from my personal experience, having now done a bunch of college events over the last 3 months, is the best part of this work. Getting to talk to students and faculty who care enough to spend 2 hours of their time thinking about civic engagement and getting involved with democracy, it fills my cup, so to speak. So I want to thank all of you for coming. Thank you to our incredible representatives. This is the future and present leaders of our party and your state and our country. So before we have one final speaker, I just want to give them a round of applause. Thank you to Dan, to the former speaker. Thank you to Northeastern for having me here. We're going to close out with Savannah Rosano, who's the NU Votes Coordinator. Savannah? Yeah, come on down. I didn't want to promise your time, sorry. I have to leave too.
Good evening, everybody. Before we wrap up for the night, I just want to extend a huge thanks to the NU Externals Affairs team, just for really helping make tonight possible. And of course, to our keynote speakers for sharing really insightful perspectives. I know that I will be walking away with a lot of thoughts, and I hope you guys are as well. But yeah, just for those who don't know me, my name is Savannah Rosano. I'm a second-year political science student. I'm also the student coordinator for Northeastern Votes Coalition, which is our campus's nonpartisan civic engagement initiative consisting of students, staff, and faculty. It is an election off-season, although I know every year is an important year for elections, but we've already had a very busy semester, and we've really hit the ground running starting in September, and are really excited to partner for events such as this one. We do have a table here tonight, so please do stop by, say hi, and find ways that you can get involved, whether becoming a general coalition member or even a student ambassador for students in the room. No matter your major, your background, your interests, there is a place for you in this work. Civic engagement really thrives when every voice is a part of the conversation. So thank you all for being here and for continuing to build a campus community that's informed, engaged, and ready to make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you.